The 1980s heralded a tech revolution with groundbreaking innovations capturing the world's imagination. While many of these gadgets were once cutting edge, time has rendered them obsolete. Join us as we revisit 20 of these once coveted devices we no longer use, reflecting on the remarkable progress we've made while marveling at the charm and nostalgia of a bygone tech era. Number 1. Typewriters. Typewriters were a game changer back in the day. Imagine a time before computers. If you wanted to write something neatly and professionally, the typewriter was your best friend. It was a mechanical marvel that let people type out letters, reports, and even entire books without needing to handwrite everything. This saved a ton of time and made documents look much cleaner. Plus, it felt pretty fancy to hear that click-clack as you worked, knowing you were using one of the most advanced tools of the time. But owning a typewriter wasn't cheap. They were considered a luxury, especially the sleek, portable models. Not everyone could afford one, so having one at home or in the office made you look professional and organized. Businesses relied heavily on typewriters to keep things running smoothly, and skilled typists were in high demand. Fast forward to today, and typewriters are almost like relics from the past. Once computers with word processors came along, typewriters started to feel outdated. Why deal with ink ribbons and correcting mistakes manually when a computer lets you edit with just a few clicks? Eventually, laptops and tablets made them completely obsolete. Now, typewriters are mostly seen as cool vintage items, but most people wouldn't dream of using one for everyday tasks. They had their moment of glory, but technology moved on and they were left behind. Number 2. Rolodex. Back in the day, the Rolodex was a must-have for anyone in business or office work. It was this big, round, rotating file where you could store all your important contacts. Each card had space for names, phone numbers, addresses, and even notes. If you needed to call a client, set up a meeting, or mail something, all you had to do was spin the Rolodex and find the right card. It kept everything organized and right at your fingertips, which was super useful in a time before computers and smartphones. But here's the thing, owning a Rolodex wasn't just practical, it was also a bit of a status symbol. A well-filled Rolodex on your desk showed that you were connected and had a strong network. The bigger and more packed it was, the more professional you looked. It became a staple in offices and was a common gift for new hires or business professionals. Nowadays, though, the Rolodex has pretty much vanished. Once digital tools like Microsoft Outlook, smartphones, and cloud storage came along, people didn't need to flip through cards anymore. Digital contacts are way faster to search, easier to update, and don't take up space on your desk. The Rolodex, once a symbol of professionalism, is now just a nostalgic memory, collecting dust in thrift stores or being used as quirky decor. Number 3. Film cameras. Film cameras were a big deal back in the 80s and 90s. If you wanted to capture memories, whether it was a family vacation, a birthday, or just a cool sunset, you'd grab your trusty film camera. You'd load it with a roll of film, usually 24 or 36 exposures, and carefully take your shots. Each click felt special because you couldn't just snap hundreds of photos like we do today. After finishing the roll, you'd take it to a photo lab, wait a few days, and finally get your prints. It was a bit of a process, but people loved it. There was something magical about seeing your moments come to life on glossy paper. Film cameras weren't cheap either. A good one was considered a luxury. And even buying film and getting it developed added up. If you owned a high-quality camera, you were seen as someone who really cared about photography or had some money to spend. But then digital cameras showed up and changed everything. No more film, no more waiting. Just instant photos you could see right away. It didn't take long for film cameras to fade into the background. Now, with smartphones, we don't even need a separate camera anymore. Film photography still exists, but mostly as a hobby for enthusiasts who love its vintage vibe. For most people, though, film cameras are a thing of the past, replaced by faster, easier, and more convenient digital options. Number 4. Floppy disks. Floppy disks were once the ultimate way to store and share files. Back in the 80s and 90s, if you needed to save a document, transfer data between computers, or back up important files, you'd grab a floppy disk. They were small, lightweight, and easy to carry around, making them super convenient. Each disk could hold around 1.44 MB of data, tiny by today's standards, but enough back then for text files or even small programs. Businesses, schools, and homes all relied on them for everyday tasks. Having a stack of floppy disks felt pretty high-tech. They weren't exactly cheap, so owning a bunch of them or even a fancy disk organizer was kind of a flex. Plus, the sound of inserting one into a computer and hearing it whir to life? That was peak 80s tech satisfaction. But as technology improved, floppy disks couldn't keep up. Files started getting bigger, and their storage capacity just wasn't enough anymore. Then came CDs, USB drives, and eventually cloud storage, all of which could hold way more data and were much faster and more reliable. By the early 2000s, floppy disks were basically obsolete. Nowadays, most people don't even recognize them, except maybe as the save icon on computer programs. Number 5. CRT bulky televisions. CRT cathode ray tube. Televisions were the kings of home entertainment for decades. Back in the day, if you wanted to watch your favorite shows or catch a blockbuster movie, a bulky CRT TV was your go-to. They were the first TVs to bring color into living rooms, which was a huge deal at the time. Whether you were watching Saturday morning cartoons or tuning in for the evening news, the CRT delivered crisp images and a satisfying glow. Plus, playing retro video games on these TVs, absolute perfection. But let's not forget, they weren't cheap. Owning a large CRT TV was a sign you were doing well. Those big screen models with wood panel finishes? Pure luxury. Families would gather around their CRTs for hours, and they became the centerpiece of many living rooms. Then came the flat screen revolution. Plasma, LCD, and LED TVs arrived, offering slimmer, lighter, and more energy-efficient options with way better picture quality. Suddenly, CRTs looked outdated and clunky. Moving one of those giant things was a workout, and they took up a ton of space. Over time, people started ditching CRTs for the sleek, wall-mounted TVs we have today. Now, CRTs are mostly forgotten, except by retro gamers who swear by them for the best old-school gaming experience. For everyone else, they're a relic of the past, replaced by modern tech that fits right into today's fast-paced world. Number 6. Video cassette recorder. The video cassette recorder, or VCR, was the ultimate gadget for home entertainment in the 80s and 90s. It let you watch movies whenever you wanted, as long as you had a VHS tape. Before the VCR, you had to catch shows or movies when they aired on TV. But with this device, you could record them and watch later. A total game changer. Families would rent or buy movies from video stores, pop them into the VCR, and enjoy a cozy movie night at home. It also made recording home videos super easy, so you could relive family memories. Owning a VCR was a big deal back then. They were pricey when they first came out, so having one in your living room felt luxurious. Plus, being able to pause, rewind, or fast forward through a movie gave people a sense of control they'd never had before. But technology quickly moved on. DVDs entered the scene, offering better picture quality, no need to rewind, and extra features like menus and bonus content. Then came Blu-rays, streaming services, and digital downloads, which made the VCR feel clunky and outdated. By the mid-2000s, most people had ditched their VCRs for more modern options. Nowadays, VCRs are nearly extinct, except for a few collectors and people holding onto old family tapes. Number 7. Turntables. Turntables were the heart and soul of music lovers' homes back in the day. Before CDs, MP3s, and streaming, vinyl records were the way to listen to music, and turntables made it all possible. You'd place a record on the spinning platter, drop the needle, and enjoy that warm, rich sound that only vinyl could deliver. Whether it was jazz, rock, or disco, turntables brought music to life in a way that felt personal and special. Owning a good turntable wasn't just practical, it was a status symbol. High-end models were expensive, and showing off your record collection alongside your sleek turntable made you look like a true music lover. They were also central to social gatherings. People would hang out, flipping through records and sharing their favorite tunes. But as technology advanced, turntables got pushed aside. Cassette tapes, then CDs, and finally digital music players made listening to music more portable and convenient. Turntables, with their size and the need to handle records carefully, started to feel outdated. By the 90s, they had mostly disappeared from everyday life. In recent years, though, turntables have made a bit of a comeback among audiophiles and collectors who love the vintage sound and aesthetic. Turntables had their moment, but technology moved on, though their charm will never be forgotten. Number 8. Calculator watch. The calculator watch was the ultimate geeky cool gadget of the 80s and 90s. Imagine having a tiny calculator strapped to your wrist. It was like carrying a mini computer everywhere you went. Whether you needed to quickly add up grocery totals, solve math problems at school, or impress your friends with its futuristic buttons, the calculator watch made you feel ahead of the curve. It was especially handy for students and professionals who needed to crunch numbers on the go without pulling out a bulky calculator. But these watches weren't just practical, they were a bit of a luxury. Brands like Casio made them popular, and owning one gave off a tech-savvy vibe. Seeing someone sporting a calculator watch back then was like spotting someone with the latest smartphone today. It was functional and fashionable, at least for its time. As technology advanced, though, the calculator watch started to lose its appeal. With the rise of digital watches, then smartphones, people no longer needed a dedicated calculator on their wrist. Why bother pressing tiny buttons when your phone could do the math instantly and so much more? Today, calculator watches are mostly forgotten, though they paved the way for today's smartwatches. Number 9. The clapper. The clapper was one of those quirky gadgets from the 80s that promised to make life just a little bit easier and a whole lot more fun. It was a sound-activated device that let you turn things on and off with a simple clap. Imagine sitting on the couch watching TV, and instead of getting up to turn the lights off, you just clap your hands twice, and boom, the lights go out. It worked for lamps, radios, fans, anything that plugged into an outlet. For its time, the clapper felt pretty high-tech. It was a luxury in a way, offering a convenience that people had never experienced before. It was also super popular as a gift, especially for older folks who might struggle to get up and down, or just for anyone who thought it was a fun gadget. The idea of controlling your home with a clap was a cool, futuristic concept. But as technology progressed, the clapper became less and less relevant. With the rise of remote controls, smart home devices, and voice assistants like Alexa and Google Home, we started to realize that clapping just didn't have the same convenience anymore. Why clap when you could simply say, "Turn off the lights"? Today, the clapper is mostly a piece of 80s kitsch. It's a reminder of how far tech has come. What was once a futuristic luxury is now a funny, outdated novelty. Number 10. Game Boy. The Game Boy was a revolutionary gadget when it dropped in the late 80s. It brought video gaming on the go, and suddenly people could play their favorite games anywhere, on the bus, in the car, or even waiting in line. With its small screen and simple design, the Game Boy was the first handheld console to really make an impact. thanks to its ability to play iconic games like Tetris, Pokemon Red and Blue, and The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. The convenience of portable gaming combined with a solid lineup of fun games made it a must-have for kids and adults alike. Owning a Game Boy wasn't exactly cheap, so it was a bit of a luxury at the time, but it was a game changer for gamers who didn't want to be tied down to a TV. It let you carry a whole library of games in your pocket, a totally new concept in the world of gaming. But like many things in tech, it eventually got replaced. The Game Boy's low-res, greenish screen couldn't compete with more advanced handheld consoles like the Nintendo DS and PSP, which offered better graphics and more features. Then came smartphones with their powerful processors, touchscreens, and app stores filled with gaming options, making handheld gaming systems less necessary. Today, Game Boys are mostly fondly remembered as a classic piece of gaming history. Number 11. Boombox. The boombox was the ultimate portable music player in the 80s, and it was everywhere. Imagine blasting your favorite tunes at full volume, whether you were hanging out at the beach, walking down the street, or chilling in the park. It had big, powerful speakers and could play cassette tapes, radio, and even CDs in some models. With its bold, oversized design, the boombox made a statement. It wasn't just about music, it was about style, attitude, and having fun with your friends. Owning a boombox was a bit of a luxury. They weren't cheap, and the bigger, more powerful ones were a status symbol, showing off that you had both the cash and the cool factor. Carrying one around, especially with a cassette mixtape blasting, was a way of making your presence known. They were also part of hip-hop culture, often featured in music videos and movies, adding to their legendary status. But as time went on, boomboxes started to feel outdated. They were bulky, heavy, and not as convenient as newer options. As digital music players like the iPod became more popular and portable speakers improved, the boombox quickly lost its appeal. People wanted music without all the bulk, and smartphones made it even easier to carry music everywhere. Today, boomboxes are mostly a throwback. They're fun to look at in thrift stores or used as retro decor. But with the rise of Bluetooth speakers and wireless headphones, they've pretty much been replaced and forgotten by most. Number 12. Macintosh. The original Macintosh, released by Apple in 1984, was a major leap forward in personal computing. It was one of the first computers to feature a graphical user interface, GUI, making it way more user-friendly than the command line computers that came before it. With its sleek, compact design and a small screen, the Macintosh was pretty revolutionary. People could click on icons instead of typing out complicated commands. It brought computers into the mainstream in a way that no one had seen before. Having a Macintosh wasn't cheap, and its all-in-one design with a built-in screen and floppy disk drive was impressive. For a while, owning one of these meant you were on the cutting edge of tech, especially in offices, schools, and creative industries like graphic design and publishing. But as technology evolved, the Macintosh soon became outdated. It was replaced by more powerful PCs, laptops, and eventually the iMac, which was sleeker and more advanced. As Windows-based computers and laptops gained more popularity, the original Macintosh faded into history. While it paved the way for later Apple products, it was ultimately overshadowed by more modern, portable, and versatile devices. Today, the original Macintosh is remembered fondly as the starting point for Apple's success. Number 13. Answering machines. Answering machines were a big deal before cell phones and voicemail systems took over. If someone called you when you weren't home, an answering machine would pick up the call and record a message, letting you know who called and what they wanted. It was super useful for not missing important calls, especially from work, family, or friends. People would leave a personal message on the machine, something like, "Sorry, I'm not home right now. Leave a message after the beep." Having an answering machine was a sign that you were organized and had a system in place for keeping up with calls. It even had a little light that blinked to let you know if there were new messages waiting, which gave a feeling of control over your communications. But as technology progressed, answering machines started to feel outdated. With the rise of cell phones, people no longer needed a separate machine to record messages. Voicemail on cell phones allowed you to listen to messages anywhere, anytime, and voicemail could even be checked from other phones. Plus, most people didn't have a landline anymore, making answering machines pretty unnecessary. Today, answering machines are mostly a thing of the past. They're now just a funny reminder of how we used to deal with missed calls, replaced by more modern and convenient ways of communicating, like voicemail on our smartphones. Number 14, cassette tapes. Cassette tapes were the go-to way to listen to music in the 80s and early 90s. They were small, portable, and easy to pop into a cassette player or Walkman, letting you enjoy your favorite tunes anywhere. You could also make mixtapes, which were like personalized soundtracks of your life. Making a mixtape for a friend or a crush was the ultimate gesture, and people loved the freedom of creating their own playlist before digital music made it easy. You could buy albums, record songs off the radio, or even record your own music. It gave people access to music in a way that wasn't possible with vinyl records, which were too bulky to carry around. Cassette players and Walkmans were also pretty affordable, so they became a staple in many people's lives. But as technology advanced, cassette tapes became outdated. CDs offered better sound quality and didn't have the annoying issues with tape getting tangled or worn out. Then came MP3s, and finally streaming services, which made cassettes feel even more obsolete. Why carry around bulky tapes when you could store thousands of songs on your phone? Number 15, the pocket computer. The pocket computer was an early attempt at creating a portable handheld device that could handle basic computing tasks. Back in the 80s and early 90s, these little gadgets were the height of tech luxury. They had tiny screens and simple interfaces, but they could perform basic functions like calculations, storing notes, and sometimes even running simple programs. It was like carrying a mini version of a computer in your pocket, hence the name. Owning one of these pocket computers was a big deal. They were expensive and seemed like something only serious tech enthusiasts or business professionals could afford. The idea of being able to carry around something that could do more than a calculator but still fit in your pocket felt futuristic and cool. But just like many other tech gadgets from the time, the pocket computer didn't last. As personal computers became smaller and more powerful, laptops and smartphones started to do everything a pocket computer could, and much more. The arrival of PDAs, personal digital assistants, and eventually smartphones made these tiny pocket computers irrelevant, as they could do basic tasks and a lot more. Today, the pocket computer is mostly forgotten. It's been replaced by more advanced, multifunctional devices that fit in your pocket. Smartphones that can handle not only computing tasks, but also communication, entertainment, and even photography. The pocket computer was a cool piece of tech history, but it was just a stepping stone to the devices we use today. Number 16, 8-track tapes. 8-track tapes were a popular format for music lovers in the 60s and 70s. They were a type of cassette tape, but much bigger and with a continuous loop of tape that played music without needing to rewind. They were mostly used in cars, allowing drivers to listen to music on the go, and were the precursor to cassette tapes for portable listening. The sound quality wasn't great, but the convenience of having multiple songs on a single tape was a huge selling point at the time. Owning an 8-track player or deck was a luxury, especially in the 70s when cars started including built-in 8-track players. They were also a sign of being up to date with technology, and people loved the novelty of not having to flip the tape over to continue the music. It was considered a cool gadget to have, and music lovers collected all kinds of tapes to play in their 8-track players. But as technology evolved, 8-track tapes started to fade away. The quality wasn't as good as vinyl, and their bulky size made them less practical than cassette tapes, which were smaller and easier to carry around. By the early 80s, CDs and cassette tapes took over, and the 8-track became obsolete. Number 17. Dot matrix printers. Dot matrix printers were once a common sight in offices and homes during the 80s and 90s. They were known for using a print head that struck an ink-soaked ribbon, creating dots on the paper to form characters and images. It was a pretty simple yet effective way to print documents, and they could even print on multi-part forms, which was a big plus for things like invoices or carbon copies. Having a dot matrix printer was practical. They were typically cheaper than laser printers, but still reliable enough for everyday office tasks, like printing letters, reports, and even some graphics. Their loud, repetitive grinding noise when printing became a signature sound in many offices. For businesses, owning one of these meant you could get the job done without the expensive ink costs that inkjet printers demanded. However, as technology advanced, dot matrix printers quickly became outdated. Inkjet and laser printers offered higher quality prints, were faster, and operated much more quietly. The ink ribbons on dot matrix printers also made maintenance more expensive and inconvenient. Soon, they were pushed out by these newer, more efficient technologies. Number 18. Pager. Pagers, or beepers, were all the rage in the 80s and 90s, especially among doctors, business professionals, and anyone who needed to stay connected on the go. The pager was a small device that received messages, usually just a phone number or short text, and buzzed or beeped to alert the wearer. If you got a page, it meant someone was trying to reach you, and you'd have to find a phone to call them back. It was like an early version of texting, but with far fewer features. Having a pager was considered pretty cool and often a sign of importance, especially for people in fields that required constant communication, like healthcare or emergency services. It gave people a way to stay in touch, even if they weren't near a phone. But pagers didn't last long. With the rise of cell phones in the late 90s and early 2000s, the need for a separate paging device faded. Cell phones offered everything pagers did and a lot more, like texting, internet access, and of course, calls. Plus, smartphones eventually turned our pockets into mini computers, making pagers completely obsolete. Number 19. Handheld electronic. Handheld electronic organizers were a must-have gadget in the 80s and 90s. They were small, portable devices designed to help people manage their schedules, contacts, and tasks. You could store phone numbers, set reminders for meetings, and even keep track of important dates, all at the touch of a button. These organizers were often a step up from traditional paper planners, offering digital storage and making organization a bit more high-tech. Owning one of these devices was seen as a bit of a luxury, especially when they started to get more advanced. The larger models could even include features like a calculator, address book, and calendar, which made them a versatile tool for busy professionals. People would pull them out in meetings, showing off their ability to manage appointments in a sleek digital format. But as technology evolved, handheld electronic organizers quickly became outdated. Palm Pilots, which offered more features and better performance, started to dominate, and then smartphones arrived. Smartphones offered the same organizational tools and so much more, making these standalone devices irrelevant. Number 20. Atari 2600. The Atari 2600, released in 1977, was one of the first home video game consoles, and it changed the gaming world forever. It was a huge deal because it allowed people to play video games in their living rooms rather than at arcades. The console was simple, with joysticks and buttons for controllers, but the games were what really made it special. It was a revolutionary step forward in the world of home entertainment. The Atari 2600 had a wide range of games, from the iconic Space Invaders and Pac-Man to Asteroids and Pitfall. Many of these games became legendary, offering simple but addictive gameplay that kept players hooked for hours. Space Invaders was one of the first big hits, where you try to shoot down waves of aliens with a laser. Pitfall was a thrilling jungle adventure, and Asteroids involved blasting through space rocks. Even E.T. the Extraterrestrial became infamous for being one of the most poorly received games in history, but it added to the 2600 legacy. Owning an Atari 2600 was a luxury, especially in the early years. It was an expensive piece of tech, and having one meant you were ahead of the society. However, with the rise of more powerful consoles and better graphics in the 80s and 90s, the Atari 2600 quickly became obsolete. Today, it's a piece of nostalgic tech history. People still remember it fondly, and collectors hunt for old Atari cartridges. Its games may seem simple by today's standards, but the Atari 2600 paved the way for modern gaming consoles, and without it, the gaming world would look very different. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.